Another female student at the University of Bristol who was sexually assaulted in what she thought was the safety of her own halls of residence, and by someone she knew in her own bedroom, which just shows it's not always a man lurking in a dark alley or by someone you don't know. The perpetrator blamed his actions on substance use when often the victim is shamed for being too drunk. In this case, she was completely sober.
So I was dating a guy and I told him point blank I didn't want to have sex outside of a relationship, and he told me it was fine, that we were going to be together. So we slept together, and then I found out that it had to do with third years sharking first years as part of a bet. I didn't feel comfortable talking to anyone about it because he's in a position of power, and also because I felt like it was my fault for being naive.
I was on a night out in lounge in first year, and some guys behind me were grabbing my bum and just touching me inappropriately. I kept turning around and saying, "Can you not do that please?" and moving away, and they just kept doing it, and the more angry I got, they just laughed in my face. It was just generally a very mortifying experience, especially because me telling someone to stop just meant that they laughed at me more, which just wasn't okay.
I'd like to talk about an incident that happened on the 16 bus with myself and a friend and a group of boys. Things were rowdy, and boys felt it was okay to vulgarly talk about what they would like to do to both me and my friend. We were ultimately mocked for not finding this funny, for not joining in, which I think just epitomises that harassment comes in a multitude of forms.
When I was 16, I went to a friend's house overnight and he raped me. Even though I've said this story so many times to so many people, I've said it on the radio, I've written it, I've blogged about it, my heart is still beating fast. I've lived in Bristol for about 5 years, and since being a student here, I've been raped again 3 times and assaulted a lot. Every time it's happened, it's been someone that I know, I like, I love, and that I see all the time.
I'd like to speak about my experience of being objectified in a professional environment where I was in a position where I essentially could not say anything. I had a trial shift at a posh restaurant where the male manager insisted I wore kitten heels for waitressing, as we take pride in the appearance of our female staff. I was also told I'm not allowed to wear trousers and that I have to wear a skirt 1 inch above the knee, as a lot of old men would like to look up my skirt as I'm waitressing. At the end of the shift, I was told that I was offered the job and they needed a pretty face like mine on the door. I never turned up to my first shift and I never called them back.
So in my first week of uni, I met a guy who, after speaking for a while, realised we shared about 50 mutual friends. We met a couple of times and we went on a date, and then I slept with him. After the second time it happened, he took a photo of me barely clothed and in a compromising position without my knowledge, which he then actually posted on Snapchat with the caption "Uni Life." He made sure that I wasn't a follower of his account. Later that day, my best friend, who lives in London, screenshotted it asking if it was me, which it was. When I rang him and asked him why I did it, he just laughed and asked me what I was up to, like everything would return to normal. I reported it to the uni. They invited him to a hearing, which he never showed up to. I was then told he'd write me a written letter of apology. This was back in November, and I'm yet to receive it.
So the incident I want to talk about happened to me on the Clifton Triangle. It was about 3 in the morning and it was just any normal night out. I had just said goodbye to a friend I'd been out with on the Triangle. She'd walked home one way, I was going home another way. The Triangle was fairly well lit still and lots of people were still out around the club, so I felt fairly safe walking back on my own at that time. There were 2 guys walking the opposite direction to me, and suddenly they blocked my path with one of them saying, "Oh, we want to talk to you." They completely blocked my path, and in the split second of confusion I paused, the other one grabbed my chest and just completely went for me. like that, or any woman like that, and he just laughed and said, "Fuck you, bitch." He knew what he'd done and he didn't care.
In my first term of freshers, I walked a drunk friend home after a night out. One thing led to another. I was never intending for anything to happen, but he was pushing for a bit more. I refused to let anything happen, but he said, "It's not rape, you want this."